won't touch me.
Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting of September 10th, 2014. Will the council members please introduce themselves, starting on my left?
Chris Johnson.
Dave Olson.
Dan Haggerty.
Laura Stein.
Lisa Ketchum.
Aaron Deinzer.
And Joel Janot won't be with us tonight. Supervisor Horsley?
And I'm Don Horsley, supervisor for the 3rd district.
And you're going to give the supervisor's report tonight?
I'm going to give you Nicholas's report.
That'll do.
It's actually a supervisor report. But so I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about Surfers Beach, and I know you've been involved with that, and Chris has. Chris asked me about, we are ready to sign a contract with essentially it's an engineering firm, and they're going to do all the engineering, the environmental, and that permitting. It's a project that costs in the neighborhood of about $400,000, and eventually what will happen is that once we, what we agreed with the state of California was we would do all the initial engineering, the environmental, and the planning and permitting, and then they would actually finish the whole project. So Chris asked, when's the next meeting? Actually, there's a meeting with it's actually kind of a meeting between our engineering people from both Caltrans, our Department of Public Works, as well as the contractor. The contractor, it's an acronym, it's RENCO. It's WRENCO. They are used to working with Caltrans, specifically in this particular district. And what it's going to be is I was going to say it's a 400-foot wall, but no, it's not a 400-foot wall. It's actually a 400-foot long segment of the trail that's going to be repaired. I have to call out Nicholas Calderoff, who did a really great job working with the city of Half Moon Bay, actually getting them. They contribute about $100,000. The county of San Mateo, we contribute about $350,000, and then he was actually able to get the Coastal Commission to contribute $15,000 for the trail. So it's a real partnership between a number of different agencies, between the county, city, and the state of California. So the kickoff meeting, working out the final details on the contract, that will be tomorrow in our offices at 3:30. You're welcome to join us, Chris.
I will be at Cosign Design Review.
And then the parallel trail, next week the county's we're going to release the request for proposal, RFP, for a consultant to design the first segment of the trail. It's in Miramar, it's from Alto to Coronado. We were awarded a $500,000 grant to do the permitting, the planning, the design of the trail segment. The next is the coastside parking assessment, not assessment in terms of assessing people for money. Sounds like that, but it's not. It's in assessing we're working again with state parks, GGNRA, of course the county, to try and figure out really kind of a data collection to find out where our parking needs are, where we could conceivably place parking and alternatives for the community. So we will actually be bringing once we come up with some alternatives, we'll actually bring it back to the community through the MCC for feedback. Unfortunately, we also applied for an active transportation grant to do another segment of the parallel trail, and unfortunately we were not selected, so we did not get that additional grant. It would have been nice to get another segment of the parallel trail, but unfortunately we were not one of the grantees, one of the awardees. So that's a quick synopsis of what we have been doing.
Thank you.
I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Do council members have any questions? Does anybody in the public have questions? Can you come to the microphone?
Hi, I'm Ed Lorenas. I live in Moss Beach. I'm here as a Moss Beach resident, but I'm also chair of the San Mateo chapter of Surf Rider. My question is related to the Army Corps of Engineers study on the harbor and Surfers Beach. And have you heard anything?
Yeah, we've heard, but there's nothing very definitive from them. At one time they said 2 years, then they said 3 years. We have talked to we put them in contact with Caltrans. We actually tried to get them, to do, we wanted dredging of the silt, the sand that's in the harbor. We know that was 140,000 cubic yards. You could dump that all on Surfers Beach. You would make a significant difference on that beach. you could also put some of it on the northern segment as well. So either way, and they know that, they just, are, they're reluctant to commit until such time as they come up with a completed study. So my best guess is still a couple years out.
For the study?
For this, well, the study is designed to come up with a long-term solution, and I don't think they have not indicated any willingness to come up with short-term solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have questions for the supervisor? Thank you. Are there any other government representatives here that wish to report? Neil?
Neil Merrilees, I'm the chair of the San Diego County Parks Commission. And you guys got a letter from us this week about a committee that we're forming that has to do with the county's possible responsibilities or not regarding neighborhood parks. So, it took over Moss Beach Park, which is great, and saved the community. What should the policy be on situations like that? They're going to arise again, probably. There are probably other unincorporated neighborhoods that might need parks in the future. And I think it was the parks supervisor who came up with the idea that maybe they needed some sort of policy, so they're not just dealing with everything ad hoc. And so Maida and I, from the Parks Commission, want to invite other bodies, so elected and appointed bodies, to join us in that discussion. And it would be an ad hoc committee designed to come up with a deliverable, a letter, a advisory note or something regarding this policy. We think we can do that in a relatively short time, maybe, 6 or 8 meetings. We think we maybe would meet once a month. And so we would like somebody from the Midcoast Council to be on the committee. I can't tell you exactly what time we will meet or what date we will meet, because there will be a few more people to deal with. We have been meeting for little issues like this around 4 o'clock at like a Pete's. And it would be probably be on the other side of the hill, because most of the people are on the other side of the hill. Or maybe we could have one meeting over here, I don't know. So yeah, I can't commit to the exact time or date. I know that's hard to schedule, but for me, I can meet super early in the morning, I can meet late at night, and as long as I have enough notice, I can revise my schedule. So I'm flexible. But it's a matter of getting 5 or 6 people together. So yeah, I can't tell you that yet. But I think it might be fun, and it might be fun to at least talk about, even if we don't solve the problem, because it is a problem. We can kind of see it was a problem in our neighborhood. We solved it by hook or by crook, but it would be nice to have a direction to go in the future that was maybe a little bit less ad hoc. So think about it for a meeting or two, and I guess just email us back and let us know.
Thank you, we will do that.
Yeah. And maybe it would be good to have a backup person too.
Yeah.
An alternate.
All right.
So
Thanks.
Thank you.
I have an announcement also. The MCC will be sponsoring 2 candidate forums moderated by the League of Women Voters. The first one will be tomorrow evening at Cypress Meadows. It's going to be for the San Mateo County Harbor Commission. So that's Thursday, September 11 at 7 p.m., Cypress Meadows, 343 Cypress Avenue, Moss Beach. And then second forum will be for the Coastside Fire Protection District, and that one will be on Tuesday, October 7th at 10 p.m. here. No,
Not
7 p.m. 7 p.m. Where'd that come from?
Bring your jammies.
Okay, here, that's a ways off. Okay, so now we have public comment.
I did have one other brief announcement. The San Mateo County Housing Element meeting is going to be in this room a week from tonight. For anybody interested in housing issues and futures in the county in general, but obviously here on the coast as well. It's at 6:30 to 9 next week.
Thank you. Public comment? Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. I just want to let you know there's, had a meeting this week with some people from what's known as the North Zone in the disaster preparedness, which is Montero, Moss Beach, and El Granada. This was brought up by a couple of citizens from Montero and Moss Beach. We met with Nick Gattuso, who is Office of Emergency Services, and Jim Holly, who's American Red Cross. The idea is the county OES has broken the coast side into 3 zones, basically the north, which is the unincorporated area, Half Moon Bay, and then south to, I think it's Tamitas Creek is zone 2 with the central zone, and then the southern part of the county, and then the long skyline is the 3rd zone, zone C. Anyway, we're going to sort of spearhead how we take the whole county wide, coast-side-wide emergency action plan, how we can take that down into a neighborhood plan, because if it's major, we're probably going to have isolated pockets of people that need to, you know, CERT training is a plus, so they can, you know, look at what's going on and do the reconnaissance. Medical people, if we need to do triage, and then ham radio operators who can help with communications if the phone lines are down, which, again, if it's a big enough emergency that CERT's activated, probably all 3 of those things will be needed. Anyway, and following the Nails tradition, I don't have a time yet, I don't have a date yet, but I'm looking for people that are actually interested and want to do this. You know, any commitment is fine. Long-term commitment is even better because it's at the very early organizational stages. It's not fully mapped out, but it'd be really good to start getting people from the community aware of it, listen to their ideas, see what we can do to improve the overhead plan, the overall plan. The county has put out a draft plan, which I believe I sent to most of the board members. That's still a draft, so it can be changed. It's going to be a living document. It's more than likely going to be changed a lot. So the one thing I want to bring out here is contact me. Everybody knows my email address. I still use my mccbillkehoe@gmail.com. If you're interested in it, and then I can try and get it coordinated and get a meeting room around that. And like I said, the more the merrier. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other? Len?
Hi there, council members, Supervisor Horsley. This is something of a repeat of the last MCC meeting.
Len, your name and
Len Erickson from El Granada.
thanks.
Welcome. Made some comments at the last MCC meeting when the secretary asked me to reprise them, and I reflected back because there were a number of transportation issues that came up. I thought it created some confusion, and there were some changes of thoughts in my mind. So I just wanted to go back to transportation projects, and in particular, with regard to the Highway 1 Traffic and Safety Improvements Project, 2 points. One, I raised the issue that can sometimes be lost on the public, that in coming up with a project that will put marked crossings on the highway, this creates a legal requirement for pedestrians to, when they enter the crosswalk, cause traffic in both directions to stop. Sometimes when we get into the discussions of medians or raised medians, there's the thought that it's a great place for the pedestrians to go to protect themselves from the traffic that hasn't stopped, but in fact, the traffic is supposed to stop. I just think it's important to keep that in mind in the front when we looked at it. The second is regarding expanding project scope. In the comments I've made on the crossings, I've often tried to highlight where they can connect to important adjacent trails, and I listened to others talk about ways in which left turns, going beyond basic left turns, you can do other things that would improve the traffic flow. When I step back, I think both of those are expansions of scope on the project, and my general experience in projects is once you begin to expand the scopes, you sort of blow it off from its original intentions, and it's very hard to keep it to schedule or cost. So in fact, I've backed away from my thought to worry about connections to crossings, and think the same should be done so that you can bring forward a thin crossings, safe crossings project. Second comment was regarding connecting the coast, which we were all introduced to last time. And as I understood it from the time on the MCC and the plans we put forward, We had a concept plan reflected in the 2 Highway 1 safety and mobility studies, and the crossing project just mentioned was in fact a good example of an action project. As they reviewed their interest in all sorts of projects, I thought, well, is this a refinement of action projects or another concept plan? But realized really, if you look at the basic statement in their scope, it's develop and analyze a range of alternative strategies for addressing existing transportation-related problems and for mitigating and minimizing the impacts of future developments. Identify land use strategies for minimizing these impacts. When I hear the last process statement of the project, development of a finance plan, what can we afford, it seems like that's going in the somewhat opposite direction of how big can it go before we can't afford it, as opposed to how to minimize it to keep within the scope. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting project, but I hope they'll clarify that area. Thank you.
Leonard.
Leonard Warren out of Granada. 2 things. At the last Granada Sanitary District meeting, it was mentioned that we're going to have a special meeting on October 2nd. But on the way up here, Chris told me that that conflicts with something else that the county has scheduled, so I don't know at the moment whether we're going to do that or not. One of the problems with having 35 different government agencies on the coast side is everybody schedules in a vacuum, pretending like they're the only government agency. And no offense to Supervisor Horsley, the county is actually the worst offender on that. Not checking for other regular meetings on the coast side before they schedule, because that also conflicts with MWSD's regular meeting. I'll contact the GSD general manager and see what we're actually going to do here. The other thing, Len's comments reminded me of something. I took some photos over at Stanford, because on the safe crossings thing, we heard the consultant say you got to have flashing lights and lines and signs and all this clutter that we don't want on the coast side. So and night lighting for the center median. So Stanford has a lot of internal streets that I think they own, and I took photos. They're on my cell phone. I'll try and get them over to Lisa if she wants to put them up on the MCC website, of center medians that they have all over the place at Stanford. No lights, not even a reflector at night, just a curb around the center median, no signs, no street lights, nothing but the center median with the raised curb.
And the speed limit is not 45.
It's probably 25.
It's 25.
Yeah, it's not posted, so it's probably 25. There's no speed limit sign anywhere inside Stanford as far as I know. So it's probably 25. But I think that the consultant's claims need to be questioned. I would like to make those photos available.
Anybody else? Oh, Dan.
Yes. Wanted to make the announcement that the cherished post office lot in El Granada now has a for sale sign on it. On April 4th of this year, the Harbor District declared that lot a surplus, and the process for selling the lot is moving forward. I just want to say that I'm not happy with how things are going. In the 90s, there was a large building that was proposed to put up in that lot, and the community had an enormous outburst towards this. So the Harbor District manager is keenly aware of how important this lot is to the community of El Granada and beyond. I've talked to members in Half Moon Bay. I've talked to community members outside over the hill, and they all love the small town feeling that this area provides. So I'm very upset. Well, I'm just not happy with that the Harbor District has never asked our community how we would like the land to be used. It's San Mateo County community property. Our San Mateo County tax dollars have been keeping the district afloat all of these years, and You know, I think of an analogy like the city of San Francisco, if they had financial problems and they thought that they could get out of them by just selling half of Golden Gate Park. You know, it just wouldn't fly. Well, you know, it's a very much smaller situation here, but it's essentially public land that's being sold off. And the community of El Granada should be first in line to have an opportunity to figure out how they could, how our community could make a deal work. And so I would invite, I think we should invite Chief Cole. I understand the fire district is currently looking at the lot, and they want to build a big building there. There's no guarantee that they will, but someday, you know, there may be a big building there that the community will be very upset with. So I think that we should invite Chief Cole to come and give us a update on his plans, where in our Midcoast they want to put a fire station. I think we should maybe have a discussion on the agenda at the next meeting. That's all.
So, we got a speaker slip. Sabrina?
Hi, Sabrina Brennan. Wow, this is low tonight, huh? I just wanted to give you guys an update for anybody following the San Mateo County Harbor District race. There's an election in November for 2 4-year seats and 1 2-year seat. And last night, the San Mateo County Democratic Party endorsed 3 candidates. They endorsed Nicole David, who's here tonight. They endorsed Tom Matoush. Oh, and I should say for which seat. So Nicole's running for the 4-year seat, and Tom Matoush also got the endorsement for the 2-year seat. And Robert Bernardo, who's an incumbent, got endorsed for the 4-year seat as well. So again, there's 2 4-year seats and 1 2-year seat. And I also wanted to announce that Nicole David got an endorsement from Supervisor Dave Pine, and Tom Matoush today got an endorsement from Senator Jerry Hill. Thank you.
Laura, did you have something?
Just briefly, I wanted to mention about scheduling county meetings. If you could let all of your staff know, if you go to the Midcoast Community Council website, Lisa keeps an excellent calendar for every meeting that's going on the coast side, so it's easy for people to see what's happening.
I would be happy to let them know.
Thank you.
I try to keep an accurate record, but there may be something missing, but I do try and keep it up to date. Speaking of which, there is a Harbor District, the general manager of the Harbor District will hold a public meeting to give an update on the West Shoreline Trail, the trail out to Mavericks, the repairs and improvements there, and that meeting will be Saturday, October 4th at 11 a.m. till 1 p.m. at the Comfort Inn Harbor Room, 2930 Cabrillo Highway. So are we all done with public comment? Okay, close the public comment. Then the next item is the consent agenda.
I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved unanimously. Okay, so Plan Princeton. Who wants to come? We have actually 2 extra microphones. If 2 people want to be here, and then when we get to the question and answer, the public can come there. So however we want to divvy this up.
Summer Burleson is our lead planner on the project, and I guess she will be introducing the project.
That's okay. You 2 together.
Okay, good evening. My name is Summer Burleson. I'm with the San Mateo County Planning and Building Department, and I'm the project planner for Plan Princeton, which is a project being carried out by the county in collaboration with the community. to develop comprehensive updates to the land use policies and regulations for the Princeton area. So we're here tonight to present draft conceptual alternatives for our Plan Princeton project. Since our last visit to the council in March of 2014, where we presented an overview of the existing conditions report, we've been working on drafting conceptual alternatives that are responsive to community input as well as technical analyses. Specifically, the alternatives are informed by a community visioning report that was released in October of 2013, as well, where we, which is a result of extensive community outreach through different activities and media. And then also, the alternatives is informed by our existing conditions report, which was released in May of 2014, which includes the more technical analyses for the study area. And both of these documents are available on the project website for review at www.planprinceton.com. And before I turn it over, I just want to identify what our goal here tonight is. It's to receive feedback from the council as well as the community members that are here on any key items that we've missed. If there's any concerns with the alternatives that will be presented to you tonight, whether you feel the alternatives are responsive to community visioning that's occurred, as well as to the technical analysis and background studies that have been done through the reports that I mentioned previously. So our intention with your feedback is to take it back and use it as, to use it for consideration and advisement as we go through in the next couple of weeks and refine the alternatives workbook before we release it to the general public, as well as discuss it at our next public workshop, which will be on October 2nd, Thursday evening at the Oceano Hotel from 6:30 to 8:30. And on behalf of the county, we do apologize to the Granada Sanitary District and Montero Water and Sanitary District for that scheduling conflict. But we do hope everybody can make it out to that workshop, where we'll be going through, we have a couple of interactive activities in getting the general community's input and feedback on the refined alternatives once they're released. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our Martha Miller with Diet Mbatia, who is our project consultant for Plan Princeton.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for having us. And I think this is a great opportunity that you're really getting a sneak preview of these alternatives. As Summer mentioned, it's really draft at this stage. We'll be refining them. They'll be released for public review September 25th, and then we'll have that workshop on the 2nd, which is really the opportunity for input as far as what you prefer in the alternatives. Here it's a sneak preview, and then if there's concepts that we've missed and didn't articulate. But the real opportunity for direction and a preferred plan and alternative comes at the community workshop, which as Summer said, we have a lot of great interactive activities planned for. So as I start though, I always want to go back and remind everybody why we're here and why this effort was started. And the county started the Plan Princeton effort in response to a lot of issues that were raised through the Midcoast LCP update. And there was the need to really look at the Princeton area in particular and look at ways of enhancing coastal access, recreation, education, supporting the coastal dependent, coastal related uses, the fishing industry and the working waterfront, addressing some neighborhood blight issues, addressing parking, circulation, all these things that were raised as issues to really concentrate on them in the Princeton area. So as Summer mentioned, we started with a lot of community visioning exercises, because before we really get into anything, we want to understand from the community, what does the community want for the future, and what does it see as the future? So I'm just going to summarize what's in the report that Summer referred to. And first, one of the things we kind of heard loud and clear was don't change. Maybe clean up a little bit, but preserve that existing character. The funky mixed use, the working waterfront, that small scale community character that everybody really values in the area. Allow for a mix of uses, certainly the marine related uses that support that fishing industry and the working waterfront, some recreational visitor serving. You know, there was recognition that this could have a synergy with the marine uses, industrial warehouse, research and development, maybe not need to be on the waterfront, but certainly in the inland areas. And then there was, people did support residential and live-work uses in this area. And this will get a lot of attention going forward because of where this area is located in the coast and near the airport, there's really limited opportunity for that. So although that was expressed as something that people would like to see, we'll talk about how there's real limitations in that. But I did want to recognize that desire. Of course, protecting the shoreline, improving access, and protecting the coastal resources were all community values that we've heard. So the next step with the existing conditions analysis, as Summer showed, it's a pretty thick document, but it really helps to ground us and understand what we're dealing with, what's on the ground today, and what do we need to consider in trying to reach that vision. So I encourage you to look back at that. It has been some time since I was here last talking about some of those key findings, but I encourage you to look back at it. I'll just touch on some of the main key things with, first, land use. A large portion of the study area, which is kind of shown in here, is a large part in public ownership, certainly with the airport and open space areas. The entire area is within the coastal zone, so you're subject to compliance with the Coastal Act. And you're also close to the airport, which means you need to be in compliance with the airport land use plan, which we'll talk about has some land use implications.
Excuse me?
Yeah?
Did you want to hold those up so that read on the camera? I think you mentioned earlier.
This one's not so important, but Summer can be my Vanna White and hold it up. We'll get to that in the slide. Your current zoning and the regulations right now do support, are intended to support the working waterfront. What we found as we looked at some of the uses in the vacant properties and the shoreline properties used for storage and things, it kind of brings into question whether the approach to that, even though that's the intent, the current approach to that may not be working and really actually supporting the fishing industry and working waterfront. So that's something for us to think about. Generally, the development standards for the area, so heights, setbacks, and things, are typically in line with that small scale character that people value, except for some districts, the industrial district, which allows 75 feet, may need to be reconsidered. But generally, that is the aim of the current standards. This next large section that is talking about the fishing, the boating, the visitor serving needs, kind of that economic and market analysis piece to it. And one of the key items talked about there is that Princeton is really poised well to take advantage of some interest in local and sustainable seafood. So, the fishing industry has a lot of challenges, and Princeton really isn't set up to be a large processing port or something, but it certainly could grow and attract some the niche market, the direct consumer sales, the locally caught seafood, that kind of eating local type thing. One thing we did hear a lot from the community was a desire for a boat haul out facility. So we looked at that in the report, and while that would be great, I think it's universally agreed that that would be a benefit and an asset. The cost for that is fairly high. So it's a real challenge with the implementation, because the benefit as far as increasing the fishing industry ability and production is really limited, because the fishing industry is fundamentally limited by natural resource constraints. There's just not enough fish. So that's one of those key things that we found through that. Also that the entire area, the Princeton industrial area, really isn't needed just for fishing related industries. And that, I think, is evidenced by the pattern of uses you see now. But industrial uses will continue to have a demand in this area. This is the only industrial zone property or area between Half Moon Bay and Pacifica. So it's important, and there will continue to be demand for that. Also, tourism is looking for some demand, and that's for obvious reasons. I mean, it's such a beautiful area, and the recreation and the coast, and so on. The next section on the environmental resources, we look at the sensitive habitats that you have in the area, which are quite a lot. Luckily, you do have so much property in open space and in public land, so most of these occur outside of the quote-unquote developed areas, but it's still something that we look at and consider in moving forward. This section also touches on visual resources, and I'd just like to point out that there's two sides to that. There's one that's the visual resources that you want to protect, the views of the harbor, Pillar Point, and then there's the visual character, the visual resources that's the character, that eclectic kind of funky character to it. So it's the views of what you see, and then it's also that the community character piece of it. In the natural hazards and shoreline erosion, looking at potential for landslides, geologic hazards, shoreline protection, and this is of no surprise to you along the shoreline. There's armored, a lot of unpermitted, unengineered riprap structures that really are a problem, and if an area-wide or a shoreline protection program isn't put into place, you're really at risk of losing the beach, having little or no beach left. And that's also an impact to coastal access as well. The section on circulation, parking, coastal access talks about that, as well as the different plans for the coastal trail and proposals that have been in, and looking at some of the obstacles like no sidewalks or unpaved shoulders or different pedestrian amenities along with that. Parking is a big thing in that parking is limited in supply, particularly large events and on weekends. And coupled with the limited supply is also some inefficiencies where parking isn't necessarily located near where people want to go. There's maybe not wayfinding information, or people don't know where the parking is. So there's some inefficiencies with that. And then circulation, the major concerns for that are congestion along Highway 1, lack of signage, also the lack of support facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. Then infrastructure, public services and facilities talks about water capacity, sewer capacity, so on, and no surprise, especially in the drought that we're having now, water is certainly a large constraint for consideration. So sorry to kind of bore you with that, but I did want to remind us of kind of where we've been and some of those key things. So we started with trying to get a snapshot of where the community wants to go, look at how it's grounded in existing conditions, and now we're on to choices. So we're looking at conceptual approaches of how to get from where we are today to where the community hopes to be in the future. So with this, we're looking at a range of alternatives, and I will tell you right now, no one of them is complete or correct, they're all wrong, but what our goal was to do is to offer ideas and put all the different components in that represent different ranges of approaches. And what we'll be doing at the workshop and through continuing efforts is looking at which pieces should be put together to make that alternative that is kind of the preferred approach. So we're really about offering ideas right now and getting the feedback. So just to kind of highlight where we are right now, it's the concept stage, so that overall land use character, and then once we get a sense of that, then we'll be working into more of the details. You know, we tend to get excited about the details and jump into the specific improvements or development standards. We're just not there yet. So that will certainly be the next steps. So as we consider all these things together, there's a couple of key issues that we go through and that the workbook goes through that you can refer to. But land use is certainly very important, and there's a couple different categories of land use along the waterfront, that mix of industrial, warehouse, storage type uses. All right, I guess I can do this. How about that? Technology. The Capistrano area here, more visitor serving retail. The harbor, the airport, Pillar Point, these are kind of the general categories of existing uses. Then we look at opportunity sites. And so these are areas of vacant or undeveloped land, open storage, underutilized, which we look at, well, is the value of the improvements less than the assessed value of the land? This is not to say that these are opportunity sites for development. They're just opportunity sites. It might be an opportunity for conservation. They're just helps us get a sense of where change may happen, or where there's areas of real stability givens that, you know, we're not addressing so much. So it's just to kind of get that sense, and you can see a lot of that happens down in the Princeton area, the waterfront area.
So question, or actually more of a comment on that part of the question. Underutilized is one of those sort of loaded terms.
Right.
Sort of says, oh, we should be developing this.
Right.
Also, a number of the parcels that are marked underutilized are really pretty heavily utilized. And so if you're going to do that, I think you need to come up with a better definition. Like the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club is marked as underutilized.
Right.
The brewery is marked as underutilized.
Right.
The Old Princeton Landing is underutilized. There just happen to be low assessed value.
Right.
So I don't think it's a very useful definition.
And I think you're right, and I also, you know, we have that conversation a lot, and so then I wonder if this is even a useful thing to kind of put out, because it's not intended at all to insinuate that the yacht club should go away. But I don't know how else to frame it, except it helps us kind of frame what we're looking at.
Right, but if it helps you frame it, I think you need a definition that does not rely on assessed valuation.
Okay.
It's not, in an old area like Princeton, it's just not a useful measurement.
Okay. So land use. So here's where I want to talk about the Coastal Act and the airport overlay, and the airport environs, because this is an important thing. So within the coastal zone, there's priority given to coastal dependent and coastal related uses, and that's really reflected in your existing zoning in your CCR district, which is intended typically for more visitor oriented uses, and then the W district, which is the aim to serve the working waterfront idea. So although these the uses and the land use designations can change and be modified, we still need to pay attention to the Coastal Act requirements and making sure that the uses remain, coastal related, coastal dependent, visitor serving, attracting people and supporting access to the coast. The airport overlay, which is currently right here, currently prohibits residential uses and it restricts intensity, and it basically limits intensity on a parcel to about 3 people per parcel. That's under the current plan. The draft ALU, the draft airport plan that's out, has these safety zones, which are outlined in green here. And you can see it's greatly enlarged from the airport overlay zone. And so these areas, each of them have distinct density and intensity criteria. And really what it is, it's about safety criteria. So the airport doesn't want a lot of people where if an airplane crashes, may crash. You know, they don't want to have a concentration of people there. So that's the intent of it. But what it means is that we need to pay attention to what types of uses go in there, and that we're not attracting, you know, large crowds of people right around, say, where the runway approach is. So that's a big consideration, because what used to just affect kind of these parcels now is going to affect a larger area. The county's been working with the airport to understand how these safety zones will affect what you're doing here in the planning. And what they've proposed to put in, or what's in the draft plan, is to allow that safety criteria, so that intensity criteria, to be met on a zone-wide basis. So instead of that parcel by parcel, everybody needs to figure it out. It's as long as the use is allowed within that zone, when you think of theoretically how many people would be there, as long as you're under that criteria, it's okay. So does that, okay. The one exception is within a 100-yard buffer of the runway line extending out, which you'll see on the alternative maps, and that's because that's really kind of a critical area right there. So that still needs to be a parcel by parcel basis. What this means really is, again, we're really limited in residential. We're really not able to add residential, but we're also limited in more intense uses. If you can imagine, visitor serving uses tend to attract more people than, say, a warehouse. And so we'll talk about this mainly in alternative B. We have to be careful not to increase these more intensive uses too much. Other considerations are in the circulation and streetscape, looking at the planned improvements, where the county roads are, which roads are not part of the county system, considering coastal recreation access, shoreline management, what's there today, what has been considered in various plans and studies. So really just understanding the context, along with recreation, parking, where the open spaces in the parks are. So that's some...
Question for you. I don't remember seeing on that previous slide safe aquatic zone defined anywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's all Harbor District land. Is that actually addressed in here, or did I just miss it?
I don't know if we have a definition for aquatic zone in the report, so we'll check on that. Okay, I'm almost to the alternatives. One last piece on the background. I want to talk about the draft, these conceptual land use designations. And these are really kind of the puzzle pieces that we use to start putting the alternatives together. They're intended to describe general land uses, so to give a sense of different characters of an area, and distinguishing the character of one area to the next. It's not an exact list of the uses that would be allowed, but it's, you know, we're still at a little bit of that higher level. We'll be getting, in the next stages, getting more into the detail of what exactly that means, but we're still a little bit at the conceptual general stage. So what's used in the alternatives includes coastside commercial recreation, which is more this visitor serving type area. marine industrial, the light industrial, storage, recreation targeted to the marine related. General industrial, which is some of the same, but not so tied to the marine. Business park, which is R&D, still some light industrial, but maybe a little more office type uses in that. Residential, 2 kind of levels of density. Again, not included in the airport safety zones. Want to just point that out again. The airport, agriculture, open space, and public recreation. So these are kind of those general categories that we use to start putting together alternatives. All right, so with the alternatives, so we'll start talking about the components now. And first, there's some characteristics that are really common to all the alternatives that either is something we've heard consistently throughout, or that is just kind of a given subject to powers, that are beyond us, such as, again, the Coastal Act. We need to align the uses with the Coastal Act. No additional residential in the airport safety zones, and the development standards, and development and design standards will be updated. So no matter what goes forward, that will happen. Circulation and streetscape, Highway 1 improvements, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, stormwater best management practices would be incorporated. Coastal access and shoreline management, some sort of managed shoreline strategy would be part of the program. And then with parks, recreation, and so on, the habitat and access improvements, so conservation of the habitat and some access improvements. All right, so the first alternative is alternative A, and this really responds most closely to that no change idea. And this is really has minimal change to the current land use designations. There's some basic streetscape improvements here, but it's really kind of kept to a minimum. There's a trail here on the east side of Highway 1. There is beach nourishment, shore stabilization, more with a boardwalk type coastal access in that area. Moving on to alternative B, this is characterized as kind of that expanded visitor serving area. So enhancing visitor serving. You can see the coastside recreation is expanded throughout. And when we look at the, probable, called build out, the type of ultimate density if this was all built out, and intensity, we're really at that limit for the airport safety criteria. So this is really to demonstrate pushing that maximum as far as the amount of visitor-oriented uses and land dedicated to that. And this has a one-way couplet around here with some more substantial streetscape improvements. And this introduces a business park idea in these areas, recognizing that there's some larger parcels. It is further than this waterfront industrial, so responding to kind of that R&D type concept there. Let's see. There's a public parking area here, and then there's a visitor center and a potential park area here. And so this is moving ahead a little bit. One of the comments that we heard talking to the TAC and steering committee was that rather than a parking ride, this should just be parking.
Do you have close-ups? We can't see.
Well, we have these. If you'd like to take a look at those.
Can you just zoom in on your screen?
I'm not sure.
Probably not in presentation.
Yeah.
Switch to non-presentation mode later and come back to it maybe. I have the maps here printed out if somebody would like to look at them right now. Pass them around.
And then alternative C really has more of a focus of waterfront and recreation. The coastside commercial recreation is expanded, but really concentrated along the waterfront area here, with the streetscape improvements really concentrated along there. This remains the marine industrial. This has a potential new street connection here coming through, and that idea is encouraging more street-related activity.
Can you describe exactly where the new street would be, since we can't tell it all from here?
Well, it's through kind of
The back driveway into the parking lot at the Oceana, I think is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Anything from where to where?
The existing entrances to the Harbor Village, the one on, well, they're both from Capistrano, it follows that.
So there's existing entrances on both sides, both kind of the southern portion of Capistrano and then this, I guess, western portion. Existing drive going to the Oceana Hotel, and that's where these would be lined up to be the public existing drives.
The new street you're talking about is basically the perimeter around the back of the parking lot.
Right, right.
Right, and so the circle here would provide an alternative kind of option for getting through the Capistrano area.
This has a parking area here on airport property, which links with the bus route, and the visitor center is here, potential site for that on airport property as well.
Could you explain what the visitor center would consist of? It's not a community center, it's something else?
Well, it could be a community center if that, it just was, the idea was to have a center for visitors, for information about the area. It could be a community center. It's, it wasn't thought to total detail, but some community visitor serving, public oriented center.
Is it in the airport overlay?
That is, yes. The airport overlay is very much a challenge.
So only 3 people allowed in it at one time.
And
Martha, it's really not in the restricted area, as I understand.
well, it's in safety zone 3, I believe, but that's also why we're looking at that zone-wide criteria, because that area has a lot of ag property. So there's other areas within that zone that have very low intensity, and so that's one of the reasons why they're exploring that zone-wide criteria. Because you're right, we can't have 3 people, always make sure 3 people are going to stay through each quadrant or something on each parcel. So, let's see. The shoreline improvements are a little more, I don't know if the concept would be more formal, but this would be a multi-use path instead of that more boardwalk stuff. So that's just a little, amped up, I would say, access portion. So these charts really kind of go through a comparison of the differences between, and maybe some are going to help. So alternative A really has those current land use designations. Alternative B expands the coastside recreation along the Princeton and Harvard. Again, this really is pushing the envelope on the visitor and, the intensity criteria. The marine industrial would stay in that inland triangle. Alternative C does expand it, but just along Princeton Avenue, and then marine industrial for the rest of that waterfront. The difference in the areas west of Airport Street is generally the same as existing, except in alternative B, which introduces that business park idea. Traffic circulation, the big difference is alternative B has that one-way couplet. Alternative C has that new street connection. The park and ride or parking, public parking, alternative A and B has that within the Oceano parking lot. Alternative C looks at it for potentially on airport property at Airport and Cornell. For visitor center and recreational parking associated with that, alternative B has that concept at Prospect and Capistrano, and alternative C has that concept on airport land along Capistrano. The pedestrian streetscape improvements, again, alternative A, more limited to Princeton and Prospect. Alternative B, really expanding that along the couplet area. Alternative C, really concentrating on Princeton Avenue. Again, concentrating where the visitors would be, those visitor-oriented uses are. Bicycle improvements, alternative A has a class 1 parallel trail on the east side of Highway 1, and class 2 on Capistrano north of Prospect and on Airport. We did hear from the TAC and Steering Committee to look at the bike lane on the west side, east side of Airport.
East side of Airport.
East side of Airport. So in the workbook that will be used for the community meeting, because that's something that isn't offered in any of the alternatives, we would incorporate that into the alternatives. See the coastal access improvement, alternatives A and B having the boardwalk idea, with alternative C having a multi-use trail idea along that. And so with that, the shoreline management, you probably need a little more substantial shoreline protection. So that reflects in having a seawall versus a revetment. Any kind of shoreline management and shoreline treatment that's happening, though, of course, needs to look at all the alternatives for being the least kind of impactful possible and be reviewed by the Coastal Commission. So every approach is sensitive. It's just with a more with a multi-use trail, you're looking probably at some more improvements. Alternative A for parks really has the existing. Alternative B and C both show potential park site on that vacant parcel east of Denison Creek. And then these are just a global description of environmental effects. Alternatives B and C, because they expand the visitor serving, the more intensive type uses, they're likely to have a greater demand on water and sewer. And then again, pointing out with alternative B that that's really where there's more sensitivity to ensuring compatibility with the airport safety criteria. So I know it's a lot to digest, and that's actually one of the reasons why I was happy that you're getting a preview, because this doesn't all need to happen at the community workshop, which is a challenge. But some of the key comments from the TAC and the Steering Committee, we just want to talk about. Some of these are things that will be reflected in the revised workbook that comes out, because they're either offering additional things to consider or they're corrections. But some of the more like opinion type things of whether something's appropriate or not, that's for consideration, but it doesn't necessarily mean things get taken out. They get considered with the collective kind of reaction to it. One is to add that discussion of the boat haul out just to make sure everybody understands that context, because that is something that the community is really interested in, and include a boatyard. So that was something that was identified that was missing from any of the alternatives, was a boatyard. Providing more clarity about the Coastal Act priorities and the types of uses. Include more explanation of the airport safety zone. Again, these are really important things that we need to work within, so they recognize that the workbook didn't go into enough detail. identifying a community center, and maybe what we do is switch out one of the visitor centers for a community center. It wasn't intended to leave that concept out altogether, but people there was a comment too that the business park designation doesn't fit the eclectic style. And that's one of those kind of opinions or judgments that will be considered, but we still want to offer that as a discussion piece in the alternatives. Showing that class 1 trail alignment on the west side of Airport Street, so we'll incorporate that into the
Well, you were saying the east side.
Is it the east side?
Yeah, this is with regards to the different from the Highway 1
Right.
trail. So we
The
have
the
an
question though is
alternative
more
seat
which side of
is-
Airport.
Right.
Yeah, so we would be on Airport Street, so on, first of all, for Highway 1, just to clarify, we would have alternatives that show both sides
Right.
to spur discussion. And then on Airport Street, we would also have options for, like in alternative C, we have a new path or trail, and we show it on the east side of Airport Street. So we'd also update to reflect one of the options is showing it on the west side, because we did hear comments about that as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems
So-
very strange, given how many more crossings there are on the west side.
Yeah, the east side of Airport Street has no driveway interruptions at
Yeah,
all.
that
Whereas the west
it almost
side-
sounds like a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll take a look at that and see if that is appropriate to add into the
That might have been.
alternatives.
One is looking at the feasibility of the trail along Capistrano due to the riparian area there and being cognizant of that. Concerns about the new street connector and alternative C requiring that in-depth traffic analysis. A description on how traffic patterns would be accommodated, recognizing that there's some specific needs of the industrial area uses, the fishing industry and need for maneuvering, and then the difference between the visitor serving, visitors and their traffic patterns.
It also seems a little bit strange that you had a one-way alternative for those two streets and alternative C, and it wasn't at all clear to me why anybody thought one-way streets would be a good thing. So if you're going to include one-way streets as one of the possibilities, you just say why you want that, or why it might be a good idea.
Why,
or a
yeah,
bad idea.
what the purpose would be. Okay. The park and ride to public parking, which we talked about, the public use and habitat area, making sure that it doesn't diminish the habitat value, include more explanation of shoreline conditions, noting that Harbor District plans for Perch Beach should not be assumed, and there are some mapping corrections that people have pointed out, so we'll be making those changes as well. All right.
Now for the fun part.
I just want to say, as I submitted comments as the steering committee rep for MCC, there were some things that you didn't mention. Could you put the map up of any alternative, doesn't matter
Sure.
which one? So what I'm going to talk about is this piece, this piece. So those are, I'm saying we should be offered the choice that those would be open space as Pillar Point Bluff. The blue portion there is basically the steep cliff face of the bluff. And then there's a little narrow strip of rocky shoreline there. So it's not a place people would think, it's coded as recreation now, but it is not a place to go and recreate. It's a place that you could get hurt, and it's needs to be protected. And then the yellow portion is the private parcel behind Pillar Ridge, and it's proposed for agriculture in all the alternatives, but it is not prime ag soil. Half the parcel, the east side, is a steep eroding bluff with landslides coming, crashing down on our community. And then the top portion, like I say, it's not prime ag soil. It's got some wetlands. It's vegetated in prime coastal scrub habitat. So I would like to see a choice to that. My opinion is it should be open space, but at least we should have the choice for those two parcels. And the other main point I had made here was basically the two parcels that are known as Big Wave are prime ag soil, particularly the north parcel, and the LCP has a requirement that the county fix the land use map to say that the prime ag soil parcels are agriculture land use. So that is not given as an alternative here, and it would seem like that should certainly be considered. It's currently existing agriculture, very productive. And the southern parcel is also prime ag soil, but with not such good drainage. And the U.S. Army Corps had done a wetland delineation there, and there were wetlands there which have been impacted by the farming, but that could also be considered as conservation area. In that, and I understand that the Big Wave project is in the works and it's not part of this zoning, but on the other hand, we have a proposal for a business park, which certainly must have come up in that discussion. So if we're going to consider business park, then perhaps we should also consider agriculture and conservation for those parcels.
I just want to mention, there is difficulty though, and the county needs to be real careful about designating privately owned parcels as open space or conservation. It just, and so particularly with the one near the manufactured home park, ag is pretty much as close to open space as the county can get without raising some red flags as far as takings issues. So that is a consideration in the designations.
Well, I should also point out that the property owner has no access to their land. So I don't know how they get their, so,
yeah.
But you're saying that the county just can't do that?
No, I'm just saying it's a sensitive thing that the county always needs to be very cognizant of and careful in doing.
It could be seen as a taking.
Yeah.
Well, I would,
But zoning and agriculture has the same effect, so.
I'm just raising that, I haven't, and I don't know what the county
it just
has
seems
done.
like
It's
some
just-
thought should be gone into it, because basically, they don't have access, and in order to get access, they would have to go up that landsliding slope, and they're already paying for the dirt that's fallen down on us, and, their insurance isn't just, if the county felt so inclined that they were gonna give them access for the tractors across the Pillar Point Bluff, and they plowed that up, it would be just awful. Okay. Oh, and then,
We'll probably end up buying it.
pardon?
He said they'll probably end up buying it.
At some point, but not now.
Well, I'm just saying, we're going through this zoning here, and it just thought we could get it.
You've taken me, I've seen it, I know.
And
you're still
as
here,
far as
your
the-
legs aren't broken.
Far as the circulation goes,
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed when, this was gonna be forthcoming, we have some circulation improvements, and, we have a real issue. This whole project area has these two choke points, one at Prospect and one at Cypress. That's it, the only way in or out. And we're talking about all this new development that could be happening in there, and I was hoping for another way in. And I don't know if that's possible, but it wasn't, or at the very least, some way, some designated route for through traffic through Princeton. I understand the circulation proposal with the one-way, that's for the tourists. But I'm talking about all this flood of business park or whatever that's supposed to go through there. They need a way to find that they don't have to wend their way through twice as night sweet sale and whatever it is that blocking the street. that circulation needs to be considered too.
And we did get comments from TAC and, I'm sorry, not TAC, other steering committee members regarding that as well for consideration, so that was a thing we saw.
And it is a challenge with more access points because, you know, you're real limited with what you can do on Highway 1, so.
Well, another, you know, I always had the fantasy of something coming through here, but now they just built a new building in it, but I don't know, it just seems like.
And certainly with whatever happens with the circulation and improvements, certainly designated routes and wayfinding could be a part of that.
I just had to say, I lived there, and if I'm telling somebody how to get there, and they're coming from the south, I don't bother to tell them how to get through Princeton. It's too complicated. I just say, go up to Cypress, see the Moss Beach Distillery sign, turn in it, it's because you can't even tell. They need a whole long piece of paper to write down the directions.
That's why there's so much traffic on our street.
Well, okay.
Well, yeah, but certainly, and maybe that's something we can add in the common characteristics that the wayfinding and designated traffic routes, you know, could happen with however the circulation network is, or ends up being.
Okay. So, council members, you want to go first?
Yeah, I just have one quick question, which sort of plays into the emergency preparedness comments from members of the public earlier. And I was wondering if that's been taken into consideration in the Plan Princeton overall objectives. Like, I mean, if we have just a general increase in use of the area, including tourists and just bodies in general, is that a part of the like, what is the plan if there's an emergency?
Well, certainly with whether even if there isn't an increase, the evacuation routes and safety is a big thing. What, you know, a lot of the thing with evacuation is actually more of an early warning. You know, the early warning systems is really a key part of that, and I think is what would need to be relied on more here than additional access. So the early warning and the wayfinding. I do want to point out though that, I think that it seems that the idea is that there's going to be all this new development, and that's not what the range of alternatives is meant to have as a given or as an assumption. Again, the alternative A really stays with current designations, and even B and C, while they may have different areas of visitor serving areas, it's not what we've heard loud and clear from the community is not a lot of new development, new people, and new change. So that's still a consideration, I would say. But
not quite, most of what you see the changes are really infrastructure. You know, like the end streets, or getting the walkways, the fixing of the unpermitted riprap. So most of the more dramatic changes are really infrastructure changes.
You want to come up here? Maybe one of you guys give it. I mean, for this comment period, in case you want to.
It's just that most of the changes that you see in these things.
Mark, you said.
I'm actually happy to go sit out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the changes are really infrastructure changes. So it's like circulation, it's some of the, you know, like some of the things that I've always heard from the communities that they want to have, you know, clear views to the ocean, and that those end streets that are not finished, that are just basically the paper, what we call paper streets, dirt, that those would to some extent be fixed or, you know, put into the county system. And I'm not talking about asphalt necessarily. It could be permeable surfaces. It could be, you know, it could be, I don't know what it could be, cobblestones, whatever it is. But it has to, one of the things, because of this is also an area of special biological significance. So you have to have bioswales. You got to make sure that you're not sending pollutants into the Pacific Ocean. So, but you know, having people have access to along the shoreline, I think is really important to people. Cleaning up the riprap, the unpermitted stuff, the beach replenishment. Those are really the essential elements of it. And the idea that somehow there's going to be massive development simply is not accurate.
I'm going to be mentioning a few things that are already in your letter that you probably already heard. One of the first things I'm concerned about is the circulation issues. The traffic study was done, it looks like in the plan, in 2007, and it needs to be updated to the 2014 big wave traffic impact analysis. The circulation improvement proposals don't address the issue of, as Lisa mentioned, those two limiting choke points, Cypress and Prospect. And the other thing is, so for example, today CCAD in their packet has the big wave north parcel alternative EIR that they reviewed. And so they're recommending the need for trip reduction plan as a mitigation. And based on the anticipated roadway congestion, which is much higher than what's being shown, of course, in 2007. But it was pointed out to me that that's kind of an oxymoron because there's these two roads and that's it. So how are you going to reduce the plan? So I mean, that really needs to be looked at seriously in terms of the projects going on. The other one that was mentioned, Lisa mentioned, was the land use for the Big Wave parcel, which is directly below Pillar Ridge Community Park, Mobile Home Park. It's my understanding that the LCP requires that that be designated as, since it contains prime ag land, that it be designated as for agricultural use. And that was back in 2012. This is 2014, and the only place it's showing is on the existing land use, and all the rest of these are showing, the other maps are showing either light industrial, or another, might be
General industrial.
general industrial, exactly. Which kind of seems like a total disconnect. I mean, number one, why hasn't it been changed yet is the question. This is 2 years later. And number two, the community is asking that they want to maintain this small scale, eclectic character and rural feel. And I'm not sure how a business park designation fits into that. There's a huge disconnect there. So that, to me, this really needs to be looked at if we're talking about land uses here. Another issue is caretaker units, which has been an issue since I was on the council 17 years ago. At this point in time, I know that the, let's see, total number of caretaker quarters in the waterfront district was increased from 20% to 25% of the developed parcels. So, if you're going to increase the amount of allowable residences, I have to find my second page here, how will we deal with new applications for these caretaker units when we don't know what's currently there? Because there are certain places where there are living residences, okay? So I think it was Lisa that mentioned, well, do you have an amnesty program? Is it come and confess? But I mean, seriously, how are you going to have any control at all on that topic? Water and sewer. I don't know how you can do this, but it would be helpful to understand at least the parameters so that before we even look at alternatives that aren't even going to be an option based on those constraints in water and sewer, you know, we're not going down a wild rabbit path if it's not even an option in terms of the infrastructure. And then the last one I have here is, so the report says that there's this abundance of vacant lots. So my first thought was, well, why are all these lots vacant? And it would make you think that people obviously can't make money on the property. So you come to the term marine related, which I went through everything, and it's kind of vague what that really means. But is it actually preventing a full use of the vacant land? Because it's supposed to be marine related. So does that need more of a definition? And I had one more item about if we, so what impact, particularly with alternative B, if you expand the visitor serving, it would be very useful to understand what impact the increase in the value of land is going to have on the fishermen. Now, it sounds like we're not totally talking about just a focus on marine-related uses for Princeton, but I mean, it's something to certainly consider, since we are focusing, at least as you mentioned, on the niche market for fish. And that's all.
Dan?
Yes. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a question about the packaging. The packaging of option A, option B, or alternative, we call it C. It sounds like it's being driven for the community to choose one package, and it sounds like things are not interchangeable as far as, is that?
No, that's not true at all. And so I'm sorry if that can't, what is the perception? What the alternatives do is really aimed at just offering all these different components that, you might like something in alternative A, and then something else in alternative B, and something else in alternative C. And that put together is what you think would be a great plan. We just need to, characterize them some way to give that range, and then to kind of have it make sense, to be able to tell sort of the story with it, give some context. But no, it's definitely not, there's no one of these that is the quote-unquote correct one. And even the pieces that are in each one of them, we may have missed some ideas, the community center or so on. So we're also not saying this is the end all be all, but trying to offer choices and different ideas. And you may react strongly to some that you don't like. You might react strongly to others that you really do.
Okay. I have to, I want to just quickly ask if you're aware of the original inlaid brickwork of the sidewalk system on all Pillar Point. Are you aware of that? It was built out, I believe it was in the mid-'80s.
No, I haven't seen that.
So take a walk on Capistrano Road, and, just
Check it
look
out.
down and you'll see the inlaid brickwork. Well, all of this was butchered when the new hotel came in. As you walk through in front of the hotel, you'll see that it's not there. But if you look everywhere else, so I mean, I think that if that could somehow be, brought back, it would be a more, pull it all together. Would be a benefit, a visual benefit. As far as, I have to say, I was a little shocked to see the new street extension. I'm in that area a lot, and I see a lot of near accidents. People coming out of the parking lot for the Oceana Hotel or the Flavor Restaurant. It is very dangerous to encourage more people to go up and in and out of there. That you're just asking for serious accidents. There's a lot of mothers pushing strollers, just families out to dinner, big groups of families that haven't seen each other, and who knows how long, and you know how they walk, right? This guy's going this way, that guy's going that. So nobody knows which way he's going. So I mean, it's gonna be, I think you get a lot of pushback from the community on that one, mainly for safety.
Sure.
And I will say, everybody knows there is congestion in the area, and if you could somehow encourage people to, just get out of the car quickly and have a parking lot on that corner, Capistrano and Highway 1. So if they could somehow just get off the road, get in there quickly, park safely, and then they can, walk around. That's just, more cars off the road, because you get those people that they just have to park right in front of the restaurant they're going to, and they'll go up and down and up and down, and be on the road for 20 minutes trying to get that spot, which is almost impossible. That's all I have to say.
So a couple things. I noticed that all three alternatives talk about a revetment or a seawall between Columbia and Broadway. And I think you need an alternative that does not have a new seawall or revetment anywhere. I don't think that should be just assumed that you have to have that. The other thing I'm concerned about for alternatives B and C, where the CCR is extended along Princeton and or Harvard, is you talk about still giving coastal uses priority in there. But if you start making that a CCR zone, the existing uses where people are storing boats and putting them into the water are going to be priced right out immediately and they'll be gone. So if you're going to give priority to coastal uses, I think something needs to be done to address the existing uses so they're not priced right out of the property.
Is that it? Chris?
Yeah, okay, let's see here. So in the draft workbook, in the overview of the alternatives, under land use, it says, it is expected that the allowed mix of uses in each district would be refined to better align market demand and Coastal Act priorities. So I'm a little bummed that Coastal Act priorities came second there. Also, you know, market demand is kind of a loaded term for me because it's a really general term. And what is meant by market demand? Market demand doesn't feel like what the community wants. It feels more like an economic something. So market demand, I would like a definition of exactly what market demand and forces would be at play there. The next paragraph down, development and design standards would also be updated. So sure, but that's kind of a throwaway sentence, and as a member of the Coastside Design Review Committee, Princeton is still using design guidelines from 1976.
Absolutely.
And they are the only community in the unincorporated Midcoast using those 35-year-old, or whatever it is, 38-year-old design standards that didn't get updated when the LCP got updated. And so to say design standards will also be updated, what's the mechanism for that? How long is that going to take?
As part of this plan, but it's just, we need to understand what land uses and designations will be there in order to develop those appropriate standards. Because if, you know, wherever this district ends up, if it is just along the waterfront, you would have different development and design standards than if it were expanded or if it were here. So we need to get further along in conceptually where we're going before we can do those details, because those details need to respond to what's actually, you know, going to be planned for. So it's not to say it's not going to happen as part of this overall Plan Princeton effort. We're just not there yet to be able to do it appropriately.
I hear what you're saying. I just feel that that is, you know, again, kind of a throwaway line, given how long it took to update the LCP and the design standards for the last round. And, you know, so this, you know, this Plan Princeton goes into effect with the idea that design standards would also be updated.
No, it's part of the plan. Those design standards, so the plan doesn't go into, and that's part of the effort. So,
okay, so I guess I would like to see again, I mean, a little more explanation of like exactly what are the mechanics and even the order that, so, because that wasn't clear to me that, you know, these are going to happen first and then, you know, the new zoning. So I would like to understand better, a little bit better explanation here about exactly how these are going to be updated in a timely fashion.
okay, so, and just to categorize what Plan Princeton is, it includes the land use designations, the zoning, the development, the design standards. That's the product. It's not adopt the plan and then.
I know, but we're hearing a lot about design options, but we haven't heard, I mean, proposed options and zoning
Right.
We have not heard one peep about design standards. And so if that's going to be part of this.
Right, that's why, sorry, and I tried to highlight that on that slide of like where we are. We're at concept still. We're not even at zoning districts, honestly. We're at those conceptual land use designations.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Martha. I appreciate that. I just,
I know.
it's not as easy as just saying we're going to update the design standards.
Believe me, I know.
Okay.
The devil's in the details. I'm with you on that. It's just, bear with us, we need to go through the stages.
And then the last thing, I have to bring up my thing that I always bring up, which is, I just not feeling fully satisfied that existing projects that have been deemed complete, I'm specifically referring to Big Wave, are fully integrated into this plan. Some, land use designations for the piece of property of Big Wave MPA has already been brought up. My personal thing is we see an indication here of gateway improvements at Capistrano and 1, and yet up at 1 in Cypress, nothing. And according to the EIR, Big Wave is on the hook for mitigation of that intersection. And so I ask, why is that? Why is there not a gateway improvement circle at Cypress and 1? What is going on there? Why is this not incorporated? Is something going to happen there? Is something already in the works? I know there's a reason for it, but that kind of minor discrepancy to me just makes me feel like, Big Wave has rolled down the road and nothing applies to it, and it's not going to, we're going to have to try to figure all this out without them having to do anything. I say again, is there anybody here affiliated with the Big Wave project here when we're discussing today a plan for the actual location where Big Wave is going to be? No, they're not here. They don't participate in these conversations. I don't feel like their project is incorporated very well into this plan. And, we're a community trying to develop a plan. They're asking a lot from us with traffic circulation and others, and they're not here participating in this thing. And I, again, don't see very much evidence of the Big Wave plan involved in this. So that's not really a question, it's more of a observation, but I felt it was worth bringing up because we are here discussing this plan. A lot of members of the community accept this humongous project. One more thing, overlay zones 2 and 3, no more residential, and yet the general industrial business park, Big Wave has a residential component. So again, that's another thing that makes me feel like it's not well integrated into these larger plans when we have discrepancies like that. We're going to have general industrial, but there's going to be a residential component right in the middle of it. So thank you for listening. Appreciate that.
Just one last comment, and that is, it seems important to me to spell out at what point in the process with this plan, as new projects come on, what standards are they going to have to adhere to? Because this will take place over a period of time, and we don't want to work backwards when we're putting our energies and going forward. So if the planning department can spell that out, that would be really important for us.
Just two quick comments that the Cypress is being looked at through the traffic management plan, so we are aware of the issues there. I don't know that there is any proposed fix. We had one that got thrown out, so we are looking at some other iterations. And the other terms of property values, Dave, I wonder how many people in this audience, if you had to buy your house today, if you could do it. I know I couldn't buy my house today. Property values have soared in San Mateo County, like nothing we've ever seen in recent history. So, it's property. It's something you just cannot control. We're in the middle of Silicon Valley, so.
Right. No, my concern was more about, for example, there are boat yards along that stretch that have coastal access. And if that gets on CCR, the chance of those remaining boat yards over, say, the next 20 years is basically zero.
I think we've heard that.
You done? Okay.
I'm done, thank you.
Public comment, I have Sabrina Brennan, and after her, Mary Lorenas.
Hi, Sabrina Brennan. I was going to mention boatyards too, but since Dave just talked about that, I'll move on. I would like to mention though that I appreciate seeing these maps. This is really helpful. And having just looked at them for the first time tonight, I haven't had time to process all the information yet. But there were a few things that jumped out at me. The first is the Coastside Bicycle Coalition requested to be part of the planning process and asked to be on the committee, the stakeholders committee that engaged in the process, and we were excluded. I am happy to see that there are a lot of plans for bicyclists included in these 3 options so far. So I think that's great. But I would encourage the planners to engage with the Coastside Bicycle Coalition to get input because the bicyclists on the coast side really know what we need, and they understand the safety concerns from riding here daily. We do have a lot of people that use their bicycles for commuting to work. Also, safe routes to school are a concern, and school busing has been an issue on the coast side for a while. So because of the traffic problems due to all the visitors that come out here, particularly on the weekends, many of us are captive in our homes, and without bicycles or our feet, we really can't get anywhere. So we, stock up on Friday night at the grocery store, and then we batten down the hatches and, have a nice weekend at home. And fortunately, many of us bike ride. So our bike access is really near and dear to us. So I would encourage the planners to reach out to the Coastside Bicycle Coalition for some input, and I'm sure as the plans start to gel a little bit more, there'll be more specifics to look at. I did notice, though, that the parallel trail, or what we locals call the parallel trail, I think the county's come up with a new name for it, which is the concept there is that there'll be a trail going from Half Moon Bay to Montera, primarily on the east side of Highway 1, which will allow for commute and safe route to school access without the rigmarole of riding on the coastal trail, which is also a great bike trail alternative. But for people that are just trying to get from point A to point B, we're looking for a commuter route. And I noticed that on these options, the 3 options, the parallel trail jumps around a little bit from the east side to the west side, and then going through Princeton or not going through Princeton. And I don't want to weigh in for the Bike Coalition tonight because they haven't had time to review it, but one thing that jumps out to me is if you're having bicyclists go over to the west side and have to ride through Princeton, that kind of defeats the purpose of the parallel trail, which is supposed to be a commuter trail without having to deal with a lot of tourist traffic and that sort of thing. So that stood out to me. Also noticed that on Airport there is a designated bike lane, and that might be a good solution. However, I think there needs to be a lot of thought put into that because on Airport Street, that road has a long history of being a drag strip. Especially before it got paved. And there are even photos of back in the olden days when people the high school kids raced their cars and stuff there. Pretty exciting. So there are people that still like to drive fast on Airport. I'm sure Supervisor Horsley could attest to that. So we want to be sure that the bicyclists are safe in this bike lane because people are just used to a certain type of driving on Airport, and we would want to make sure that there was an adjustment so that everybody could be safe, and there have been some accidents there. So just wanted to mention that. I know I'm taking too much time. Also, the bottleneck in Princeton, which I know has got to be a challenge for you guys. I see that there are a couple different things that have been noted on these plans. It looks like they're on 2 of the plans, or 2 of the options, there are plans for some improvements. On one, it looks like there's kind of not, but obviously it's too soon to say exactly what you guys have in mind there. But that bottleneck near Mezzaluna, near the little market, the farmer's market, you guys know the bottleneck I'm talking about, that's a chief concern for pedestrians and bicyclists, just because of the amount of tourist traffic we have jamming through there, and just in general, with it being a, what is it, a three-way, four-way stop, whatever it is. And then the road in through Oceana Hotel parking lot, well, that was a new one. I wasn't expecting to see that. So I think that poses some interesting bicycle considerations too, which should be thought about, and obviously it's too soon to say about that right now. The business park. In general, I think that the sense of the community, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but the sense I've gotten overall from serving on the MCC and just being out in the community is that there's a preference that things like business parks be located near the transit corridor on the peninsula, where you're locating job sites near residential housing. And we have a limit for housing here. We're going to reach build out pretty quickly, and we are not near public transit in any sort of reasonable capacity. I mean, there's no trains here, there's no real public transit. So to site business parks in a place where we don't have reasonable public transit and we have limited housing, it doesn't really fit with the types of regional planning efforts that are going on in the Bay Area right now. So I think that's a consideration that should be thought out. And I think what we really ought to be encouraging on the coast side is making this an attractive place for people who work from home. We have a lot of people who do work from home on the coast side. I am one of them, and I know some of you guys are too. And that is really ideal because we are cut off here. I'm not going to go too far on this because I could talk about the work from home transit issues forever. So I'll keep moving. The other thing I noticed is that the business park is located within the tsunami inundation zone, as is a lot of this. And I would...
Sabrina, could I just point out that some of these comments would be better dealt with at the community meeting where, you know, and so the whole community can hear these issues?
Well, I will make those comments.
You know, because this is more about, is there a robust set of choices here, or have we left something out? That's
Okay.
kind of what we're doing
Thank you,
tonight.
Lisa.
Okay.
So I want to make sure that we are considering evacuation, because that's a big concern for the residents that live in these areas. You know, how are we going to get out in the event of a tsunami? And we've noticed that the Big Wave Project has suggested that people run up the hill, and we're not really feeling like that's a reasonable evacuation plan. So I just want to make sure that gets considered. I'm almost done. The switch from ag land to other types of zoning is a concern. You know, obviously everybody has that concern, I would hope, because we are losing a lot of our ag land in this county, and it's something that we really need to preserve. I know the county is aware of that, and I know the county's concerned about it too, but I just wanted to mention it. And then the beachfront planning and potential beach replenishment or boardwalks or whatever that's going to be as a recommendation. Definitely interested in seeing more details about that. Notice that you've got some improved access to the beach, the Capistrano Beach, which is near Barbara's Fish Trap, and obviously, you know, water quality and pollution on that beach has been a big concern in the past. So we'd want to make sure that the access is paired up with improving public safety at that beach site and then other beaches in Princeton. And obviously that's a concern for the Harbor District as well. The last thing that's really important is this visitor center versus community center thing. And I noticed in one of these plans you've got a star for parking on Keats Lot, and you've also got a star for a visitor center. So I wanted to just throw out an idea here, since it looks like ideas are getting thrown out. What about the idea of making that lot into a park with some structure, play structures for children, and also an amphitheater, so that we can have outdoor performances, music, things like that, versus having to build a building there. I think, that one of the things people love about Princeton is being outdoors, and we've seen mistakes made like enclosed malls, and they're just not popular. So if we could create more outdoor spaces that are attractive for people and create like a room type environment, but you're outside, I think that would be something that would be extremely utilized by the public and of great public benefit to the community as well as the visitors. Thank you.
Mary? After Mary, Neil Merrilees.
I'm Mary Lorenz. I live in Moss Beach, and this might actually be too small of a speaking point considering the enormity of this project. But I work with the elderly, and I am actually chair of the San Mateo County Commission on Aging. I am not here representing the Commission on Aging. I just throw that out just to let people know that I take working with the elderly very seriously, and I want to make sure that in this plan that there is safe access for the elderly, because a lot of places right now, sure, we can walk down to the sand, but an older person cannot necessarily walk on the sand. And Perched Beach was actually a really nice spot where even an older person could walk down to the water, even put their feet in the water, before they put all the dredgings there, raised that landmass. So now that whole landmass is no longer accessible. So in this Princeton plan, I would like to see, if it's possible, reduce Perch Beach back to its nice gentle slope, and make this a more accessible area for older people, for people with disabilities. It's one of the few places where these folks can actually walk down to the water safely and stand in the water. Everybody in this room would take that for granted, because we can go a lot of places and do that. When you're disabled or you're elderly and your balance is off, you're afraid, you don't want to walk on sand. But right out there on Perched Beach, I've seen older people actually able to walk down there. So I don't know what the future plans for Perched Beach is. Hopefully it won't be a building and a parking lot. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you for giving us this plan early, and my comments are meant to make the final draft plan or the plan a little better. But I want to say thank you for this whole process. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors for funding this process and making this happen. There's been an acknowledgement generally that there are some issues in Princeton. There's incredible opportunity there, but there are some big issues. And I think what I wanted to mention was some of the problems that are not mentioned in the draft report, I think that need to be addressed, that are very important. Could I borrow one of your slides? And that is existing, it's one of your first slides, existing uses. There, you know.
Here?
Yeah, land use, existing land use, yeah. I have to say, I think this is wrong. On the waterfront, if you start at the wetlands and you work back towards Denison Creek, so you start at the west and go east, here are the land uses. Grandfathered residence, which includes boat storage, always has. Vacation rental, permitted as marine-related waterfront. Vacant lot, second home, a marine-related waterfront permit, second home. Fertilizer factory, no longer marine-related. A vacant lot, full-time residence, second home, and private yacht club. We're just to the yacht club. And we haven't really seen a single marine-related industry, and that's a big issue. I think that's something that was left out of the draft plan, that we've been using zoning now for 20 years, and it has given us the wrong results. And I think, I'm not trying to rat people out. I'm not trying to be a code enforcement. One of the nice things about having an independent planning group doing this is because that's not what we're talking about. You know, we can talk honestly about what things are and what they should be. And what we have is we have an area down there that is not marine related at all. There's one fish processing plant in the whole place. And some of the residents that have been moving in there are complaining about smells and noise. And so the non-priority people, which we've let in, are complaining about the priority use, of which there's one. The yacht club is great, I'm a member, but it's private. You know, it's not really a recreation center that can be used by the public. You guys have been using it because somebody from the yacht club sponsors you. So if you are sponsored by the yacht club, you can use the yacht club facilities. If you're not, if you're a member of the general public, you can't. Basically, in terms of the existing conditions, I think how you frame the existing conditions will influence what our options are. And I think some of our options ought to be looking at our existing zoning. For instance, you know, of those places I just mentioned, the only places that have access to the water and that actually have boats on the property and take boats down to the property are places that were built as residences. Nothing built in the last 20 years, there's no side setbacks. So you couldn't take a boat down there if you wanted to because there's no way to get it. So how boat related can it be? So that's an issue. Is that a viable alternative? And so when you're talking about moving the red over or moving the light purple over, I don't see how that's going to change really anything if you don't delineate the problems that we have existing accurately. And so I'm not saying you have to knock on every door and ask what is happening there, but you can kind of walk around there pretty much and figure out what's marine related and what's not, which is not much. And it may be that we need uses down there that are not marine related. Maybe we need design studios down there. Maybe we need art galleries down there. And maybe there are some other things that would fit into the coastal vibe that are not marine related. But I think what we've set up now, we've set up a situation where people pretend to do something, they get the permit, and then they do what is most cost effective. And really the way we can influence the outcome is by perhaps designing the structures correctly so that they could be used for marine related, maybe. The way we've done it now, they can't be. Also, they're very, very expensive. You know, when you put a residence over a warehouse, you've got earthquake issues. You've got a lot of weight on top. You've got access issues. You've got fire separation issues. All those things make the structure incredibly expensive. And fishermen have no use for incredibly expensive structures because it's not worth putting a boat in $1 million warehouse. So I guess to me, when I read the draft plan, some of the proposals, some of the ideas are great. I like, you know, maybe rerouting some traffic. Maybe we put a road across the airport. I don't know. But a lot of the ideas there are great, but unless you really delineate the problems accurately, and I think one of the big problems that everybody sees when they go down there is the zoning. And it's not just whether it's coastside commercial or marine related, it's that the highest and best use is not necessarily marine related, and if there's a way to finesse the zoning to make it happen, or to at least make it possible, that's what we got to talk about. But we can't talk about if we think that all that stuff down there is marine related now, or if we pretend. So those are my comments. Thank you. I've been waiting for 20 years for this to happen, and I feel like now that it's happening, let's try and make the best of it and do the best job we can. So thank you very much for letting us have a sneak peek.
Leonard?
Leonard Warren out of Granada. In my notes, I actually wrote down something that Neil's speech has just convinced me that I'm wrong. What I was going to say is this is a solution in search of a problem, but I guess he has outlined fairly well that there actually is a problem, which everybody here knows about, but Neil put it very well into words. And the whole live-work thing as it currently exists is a total sham. All of those exhaust manifolds that were built on the beach there were all permitted by the county as live-work, and we all know that none of them are live-work. You see ads on the the front page of Color Real Estate sections advertising them as beach houses. So, as part of this Plan Princeton, you need to come up with a way to make sure that anything that's permitted as live-work can only be used as live-work. And I don't know a legal way to do it, but you need to come up with something. I can't read the rest of my notes here. I was looking for these slides on your website. I can't find it, so it'd be nice if you put these slides up on the website. Regarding housing, actually, before I get to that, because that'll be my last thing a bit longer, I want to support Dave's comments about there needs to be a no armoring alternative. I don't care that the Coastal Commission may be buying into it right now. I'm just unconditionally opposed to armoring the coast anywhere in California, period. And so you have to have a no armoring alternative. As far as housing goes, history is in order. When the Coastal Act was passed, the Coastal Commission wanted no housing in Princeton, period, end of discussion. The 25% the 25% caretaker units are a compromise. Coastal Commission wanted 0, the property owners there wanted unlimited. So I consider it still totally unacceptable to allow for anything that's just pure housing. I understand the argument for caretakers' quarters. You still need to be careful to limit that in some reasonable way, so that it doesn't just turn into another residential subdivision, because that's what the property owners there want. And once you allow housing with little or no limitation, it'll all be housing. There won't be anything left but housing once you allow housing. So you just can't. And it's really important to go understand the history of why the housing there is so limited now. The single-family houses that are there are all existing non-conforming. Every single one of them was built before the Coastal Act. Not one was built after the Coastal Act, as it should be. So you need to take all of that into account and all of the options, that there should not be any more unrestricted housing. Thank you.
Gail?
I'll be very short. I just wanted to express one thing. I was really kind of concerned that there was the Bicycle Coalition, I think Sabrina mentioned, was not included. I'm a little concerned about that. I was in Princeton today, and I really think it's very important that you have people like that as part of this planning, because there's a lot of people there on bicycles that don't live around here, and I could see a lot of people going in a lot of places where they probably shouldn't be, but they don't know. And I think that people who are experienced bicyclists around here will know that, and they'll know that the areas where people are coming from outside the area are going to have problems with. And signage is a big problem there, as you know. So I really, really think, I was really, really concerned that you're not including people from the Bicycle Coalition on this project. Thank you.
Randy Kinghorn?
My name's, Randy Kinghorn. I'm a Half Moon Bay resident. I'm also a commercial real estate broker. So I was just hoping to share some of my kind of on-the-ground information that I've received as far as zoning, uses, business activity. As far as there was a lot of discussion about boatyards, the Harbor District actually commissioned a study in '96, I believe, that looked at the economic feasibility of having a boatyard in this area. And unfortunately, the analysis came back saying that it wasn't economically feasible because of the far-off distance of this area. There wasn't basically enough boats to support having a boatyard.
Boat haul out.
Boat haul out.
There's a total difference
Okay.
between
Yeah, of course.
yard and
Sure.
lawn.
Yeah. As far as just parking boats, you're right. Totally different scenario. And then also, Laura, you had asked about if marine industrial was restrictive to the business, and I would say that it definitely does have a pretty devastating impact on people who have new ideas that want to bring new businesses here or new development. Just a couple of the projects that I thought would have been great for the community that unfortunately folks were turned away on. One woman wanted to open up basically build a warehouse that was kind of a co-op for makers, furniture makers, artisans, sculptors, that type of thing. And that's just not something that's allowed on the waterfront. So that would have been a great thing to promote local business owners, promoting local business, and that wasn't allowed. Somebody else just about a month ago was interested in building actually a community theater, all glass, right there on the water, for plays or education conferences, that type of thing. Again, that's not something that's permitted as well. And I have reached out to the marine research community. I've been in contact with probably 50 to 100 different organizations, and was trying to bring them here because I would love to see something like a mini Monterey here in the Princeton area. And unfortunately, again, there just wasn't the financial budget or the economic possibility of doing that. So the things that are contained in the zone that are permitted now are things that unfortunately aren't necessarily economically viable for the landowners and also for the business owners. And the last point is, and I encourage everybody to actually pull down the zoning code, and like Neil was saying, look at what's actually allowed there. And let's say you have a boat repair business and you want to set up that business, and you lease a building under, let's say a 1-year lease. Well, per the code, you have to actually get a use permit, and of course, the use permit is $4,500 and takes 3 to 6 months to do. And if you're a small business owner and you're interested in repairing kayaks, to have to shell out $4,500 and wait 3 to 6 months is not something that's per market conditions. Those are just a couple of things that I wanted to share, and if you guys have any questions about anything else that's going on down there, I'd be happy to answer any questions anytime. Thanks.
Thank you. Bill?
Thanks again, Madam Chair and board members, Vice President. So I wasn't going to actually speak on this. I was going to wait till October 2nd, but I've heard some really good comments from people. I like the way Neil laid it out and how abysmal the land use has been in, for at least my lifetime on the coast, down in Princeton. And I'm not against things getting better at Princeton, but I want to go back to some of the original ideas of what's needed there. There's only so much coastline in California. There's only so many harbors, but we don't even have a real harbor. It's kind of a fake harbor with a seawall, but it's a harbor nonetheless. And, because the land use and the zoning has kind of been, over time, eroded, just like the shoreline, it's the idea, I think, when people said, don't change anything, it was mainly, don't change it for another harbor fishing mall. And I was here back in the late 80s, and there was some of the same people are here tonight, some have moved on, about just how bad a white elephant that harbor fishing mall was going to be. And we were fighting Westinghouse, and eventually that got turned over to, what it became today. A hotel that was promising over $1 million TOT in county revenues, which I know you've never seen since it's open. And I'm beginning to see, and no offense to the guy who just spoke, and I'm sorry I missed your name, but there are things that you can do in Princeton because it is facing the water. And we should do everything we can do to keep water-related businesses going there. I would love to have a beautiful, theater out here. I would love to have a musical event. I'd like to see, a place where my kids could play the classical piano and let people enjoy it other than at the hospital. But you don't have to put that there. That could be on the inland side. That doesn't have to have a water-facing view other than, well, it would be pretty, or maybe it might attract a few other people. But if you're going to go to the theater, this side of the hill players are down by the firehouse down there, and they have plenty of seats. Buy a ticket. But put fishing things and marine-related things by the water. Put industrial by the industrial. And I think you said at one point, well, this is the only area between Pacifica and Santa Cruz or whatever where there's industrial. You can put industrial wherever else you want to put a zone. We could put some industrial areas into Half Moon Bay if they wanted it.
Maybe they don't want it, maybe we don't want it, you know? It's like, this isn't the only place on earth where you can put the industrial stuff. So, you know, put it, and again, it doesn't have to, some of it, marine industrial would have to be on the water, but not all of it. So, I see the same mistakes being made that I saw in '89 and '90 with the mall that's never been rented out, and we said it was never gonna be rented out, and it's not like we're stopping people from coming in here. They don't come in here because there isn't what they call the critical mass to support that kind of a structure, that kind of a business structure. And so, whatever you do with, and there's my time is over. I wanted to go into this more, and I'll try and get something more precise for your second meeting, but you have some good ideas, but the basic idea is, and I think this is what the community was saying before, is it's marine related, we want it marine related, we want it cleaned up. The whole idea of people living there, all those kind of things, you need to come up with a plan that's gonna move this back to its original idea of being a fishing village. You know, by the way, that's why people come here. It's the only fishing village. If we lose that, we're gonna even have less traffic, and Keith Nairn's never gonna make a buck off of that fishing boat. So maybe we can be helping him out too. So, you know, think about it, a different, outside of the box kind of idea.
We start a petition to save Keith.
Whatever it takes, I'll sign it.
Is there any other public comment? Okay, I'll close the public comment. Do council members have any wrap-up comments?
Most people can't see this. I want to make sure you guys see it. I'll show it to you afterwards. This is the section you're proposing to put a revetment or a seawall on. Unless you exercise eminent domain on the people who own the property, you are going to be putting a seawall anywhere from 30 to 10 feet further out into the water and taking away that coast, where people can walk today.
Okay.
This is the coastline between Columbia and Broadway, and those red lines are the property lines.
Well, you know, Dave, one thing I would suggest that you and I should walk it one day. I think that's, well, I'm sure you have, but I think that seawall has, I think it's actually a good idea. I think it actually, it's not something the county's necessarily gonna pay for. It's gonna be something that property owner's gonna have to, because it actually essentially protects their property. But it does allow for public access along a trail there. So before you dismiss it out of hand, just let's take, consider it as a possibility. I would like to just say I really appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate Martha and Summer's presentation, and all the comments from MCC and all the commissioners. I think it's really helpful for us to get the feedback, and I know it's helpful to, the idea is to make a better plan, and something that is, nothing is perfect, but just get a better plan that has broader community acceptability. And so I think this process is helpful. The more times we go through this, the better it has, the better it could possibly be. So, and that's it's the best it could possibly be. Some kind of slogan. In any case, I do appreciate all the comments of the public. They're really helpful, and we do appreciate it.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I wanted to agree with that, and also say, and that what we're really looking for with the workshop and offering all these different kinds of choices is to hear what the good ideas are, what the bad ideas are, what may be good, but you have some remaining concerns of. Certainly, one thing I do want to point out, because I think it's been stated that the current marine-related requirements under the current zoning is not working. But just because these alternatives have marine industrial land use designations in it, through the plan you can redefine what those specific uses are. So you don't have to say, oh, that doesn't work today, so let's not consider it in the alternatives. As you pointed out, Neil, I think a lot of your comments were, the devil's in the details in those specific standards. What are the setbacks? What do you have to do in those construction details to ensure that it is used as it's intended to use? So we will be getting into that. The process also that people talked about for the use permit, re-upping that each year, that will be considered too. in that next stage. What we're looking at here is refining the concepts. And so, you know, I appreciate like Sabrina's comment about, yeah, I like the idea of the park, but the visitor center, maybe it's a play structure and amphitheater as well. Those things help us too to see, well, maybe we didn't get it right, but that idea sparked something. So those are all, you know, all the comments are helpful. Anyway, I just also wanted to point out that this is a sneak peek. Like we said, there'll be some refinements to these. And so September 25th, look for those revised ones that will be on the Plan Princeton website. Definitely please look at these and look at the background information. I think it's still great, but just so there's no surprises when you get to the workshop and you say, oh, my, you know, alternative B had the trail here and now it's here, what happened? That's why. Did you?
Even after you have all the alternatives, we'll be able to discuss each individual characteristic.
Yeah, and when you are at the meeting, just remember these, you have to group them somehow.
Right.
But they're kind of like a puzzle piece, you can move them around.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And sorry, I'm just getting to the next step slide. Which announces.
Yeah, I think Martha mentioned, but, you know,
Can I
we'll
just
be-
interject? One good thing about the hotel, there's a room.
Because if we get the same attendance we did last time, believe me, we need that. If anybody's at the last workshop, it was full, so we definitely need that space.
Right, so we will have the release of the refined alternatives on the 25th, and those will be posted to the website. We'll send out emails to get that word out there. And then the public workshop on October 2nd at the Oshana Hotel Ballroom, 6:30 to 8:30. It's where we held the last workshop. We had a large turnout at the last workshop, and so we hope everyone's still, you know, kept their interest in this. I think they have, and we hope we have another great turnout at that workshop.
Put signs at 2 or 3 strategic places there, because the hotel employees don't know where the meeting is.
Sure.
That's a good point.
Good point.
I was lost.
Yeah.
Follow the
We will do
crowd.
that. That's a good
Will
point.
there be other ways, to comment other than at that meeting?
Yeah, so we're also, for anybody that isn't able to attend the meeting, the activities that we have planned, in some form, we're working on getting those online as well on our website. So if you aren't able to attend, you're still able to have some kind of, you know, interactive input and comments into the alternatives. Some kind of modified simulation of the workshop.
But those things are not in place right now?
No, not at the moment, no.
And how long will you be accepting comments after this, after the community meeting?
It's a good question. I don't
Yeah.
know that we've gotten
I
that.
don't know that we've set a deadline date yet.
I think it would be at minimum a couple of weeks. I think what we'll look at is, you know, the type of comments, the volume of what's coming in and the activity on the website. So Kendall Flint, who's managing that part of it, does keep an eye on the activity and signups and stuff. So that will play a factor into it. But it will certainly be a couple of weeks at minimum.
Would it be useful or allowed for the MCC to comment as a council at that point?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Will the workshop be videotaped?
We didn't have a.
We have not looked at that option. I know we
why?
didn't last time, I don't believe.
Any reason why it's not looked at?
Nothing, I don't think anything in particular. I mean, I don't think it was, we were intentionally not trying to. I think it's just not something we had.
It is a
thought.
difficult thing to
It's a huge.
video too, because, you know, if you can imagine a number of different tables and, I mean, just the background noise alone and everything I don't know.
At the last workshop, we had our final tally, I think, was about 160 people. And I think we had like 16 to 18 tables of 10 each, and it was very loud. it is, you know, it's a large space,
It'll
but
be
it
amplified,
only
right?
holds so
You'll
much.
have microphone,
So
it'll
many
be
people.
amplified?
We do have, yeah, so we'll have a presentation up front, and then people break out into their small group
So the audio would be very
tables.
easy to be recorded.
So, and then at the end, we'll come back as a group and kind of reflect on the small group activities, is kind of the general.
Sarah, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. We're trying to do a very significant outreach, just as we did last time, to try and encourage as many people to come. But I would just suggest that if you know folks you think should be there, that you take it upon yourself to make sure they're at least know about it and are invited. We will do everything we can,
Right.
and Kendall and the steering committee will be sending out the pack. But if you could also come and then encourage others to, that'd be awesome.
That would be great.
Thursday.
It's a Thursday,
Thursday the 2nd.
the second, right?
Bring your friends, bring your neighbors.
Right.
Your
Is that-
boats.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you to everyone who
Before you
participated.
before anybody moves, please, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
You did a really
Oh, certainly.